I'm Mark Beckett. I'm one of those hard to find contractors you were just talking about, Rob. I renovate houses for a living for myself and for others. So some of the examples we might be looking at tonight might be some of the deals that we've done for ourselves. On the investing side, we have buy and hold property, do renovations for profit, as I said, for ourselves and agents and sellers and investors. So if you have a project that you might want looked at in the Northern Virginia area with one of those, as Rob said, hard to find good contractors. I think we're not too bad at what we do. We understand how investing works and what you're trying to do with your projects. So if we can ever help you out at all with any of those projects, please do let me know. If anyone's an agent, has a client who wants to sell their property for the most amount of money possible while spending the least amount of money possible, that's exactly what we do for ourselves. We can do that for other people too. So that's the business that we're in. Love to help you out if we can. That's what I do. Ali, what do you do?
My name is Ali Davar. I am a real estate agent / sometimes IT guy. I specialize in helping investors, builders, developers, specialize in helping solve difficult problems. We also got a couple of construction developments that we're working in DC, right? We're selling the whole building, right? So anything that's outside the box, anything that just like Mike helping somebody really take their investment portfolio and take it to the next level. That's what we do. Been working with Rob since 2019 and been doing great with Mark starting this year.
Take it away, guys.
Cool. All right. That's who everybody is.
When we get to the examples, I need to pull them up. So I'm gonna need a few minutes when we get there, but until then, we should be good. So what are we talking about today, Mark?
Well, we talked about who we are. We talked about who everybody else is. As always, we're not just trying to burn time with that. That kind of is how all of this works. We'll talk about our topic for the evening, but if you actually want to make money, hang out for a couple minutes afterwards and talk to the other people that you heard in the room, right? Everybody here is looking to do something. We do deals with the people in the room. People in the room do deals with one another. Come often enough, talk to enough people, you'll get business from this activity. So hopefully you'll learn maybe something tonight. Tonight's topic is about hopefully renovating for big dollars for rehab. Some of this is applicable for buy and hold also. But it is, as always, buyer beware. So do your own research, right? Important legal gobbledygook. Don't trust me. I'm not an accountant. I'm not your lawyer, but I can tell you where you can find good ones of those if you want. That's the other thing we're doing here. We're a network, right? We want to share information with one another. So if it's not in this presentation, at some point, we'll encourage you to find us on the old closed Facebook group, meaning you have to apply to get into it. So we keep the spammers and scamming people out of it, but everybody else that has deals, looking for money, looking for contractors all across the country can be found in that Facebook group. So I highly encourage you all to check that out. So
Can I give a quick testimony on that?
Yeah.
Buki, you want to give an example of like the deal that you just did off the Facebook group? Were you paying attention or no? No, you weren't. Okay, I'll give you an example. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Like say it real fast. Because I want people to understand like there's dollars in it.
It was on Friday night. I was just scrolling through Facebook and saw that Isabel had posted a deal that she had. And I scrolled past it, and then I came back to screenshot it and decided to send it, just texted it over to an investor that I know. And I didn't think anything was gonna come out of it, but I did. I sent it to him. The reason that I didn't think anything was gonna come of it is because she was involved, and then there was gonna be me as another layer. So I thought there were just too many layers in there. But I texted it to him anyway, and he immediately responded and said, "Get me that. I want that." So I responded to her and I said, "I have someone that wants this deal." And we started talking numbers and, so I texted Rob and I said, "Rob, I have someone for this. What do I do?" Anyway, we talked numbers, locked it down. He was adamant that he wanted the deal and we put the deal together. And I got paid from that. She got paid from that. There was a realtor on the other end, got paid from that. She got paid as a realtor. She got paid as wholesaler as well. And I got paid and the finder's fee for him. And I have the listing on the back end.
Yeah, I'll give you just a little bit more color. It was
dear friend of ours has been around for a while.
she's never done an investment deal. This is her first one. She just made 200,000 on her first investment deal in a week. Not too bad. felt really good to help her put that together. She's like, what do I do? I'm like, you lock it up. This is the contract. This is what you say. This is how you present it. I go, you have cash. Because sometimes the energy that you put out, like the people can feel that you're hesitant, that you're scared. I'm like, you have to be like, I have cash. I go, you do have cash. We're backing you. You have the cash. If you want to do it, just feel confident, right? So she writes her EMD, she presents the offer, she locks it up, and then she starts getting nervous, right? She starts getting nervous because she has this thing. I'm like, okay, well, if you're nervous, why don't you just put it out to the gridiverse and see what happens? She put it out and then she just started getting bombarded, right? And she's like, well, how do I now write the back end contract? So we walked her through how to write that contract. And then she was negotiating with some people. Well, then I saw Buki sent it to one of the investors, and then Buki's like, well, how do I get compensated on this, right? And I was like, well, this is what you asked for, right? And I knew the numbers, so I knew where the margin was, and he was like, yeah, lock it up. We ended up securing it. So a dear friend of ours made a great wholesale fee. She also made commission on that. Like you said, there was a listing agent on the other side. It was just a win all around, right? So the power of making sure that you guys are looking at what's happening in that Facebook community. Because, there's a lot of garbage, people post stuff that are not deals, but every now and then there's a little gem. And if you know the market, it's a good deal, you can capitalize.
And I almost talked myself out of sending it to him because I saw all the comments. And I saw all the people saying, send it to me, I'm interested, without all the layers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, there you go.
Yeah.
So a little hustle goes a long way. That was good.
Reminds me of something you always say, like to newer agents that want to do this investment part of the business. We always find somebody that's looking to flip and we get excited. We always say it's about who controls the deal, right? It's easy to find somebody that everybody wants to flip. Everybody says, find me something, but whoever controls the deal is the one that's going to make money because everybody will come to you.
That's right.
that listing agent was in the grid network.
They didn't have the expertise, right?
Yeah, she didn't know how to monetize that.
So that was money made on a wholesale deal to an investor who's now going to renovate it and hopefully make money on their back end, which is what we're talking about now. We spent the first part of the year talking about how to get the phone to ring and estimate renovations and talk to motivated sellers and understand what a deal looks like. We're now going to assume, great, we've found ourselves a deal. How do we extract the maximum amount of money from this deal while protecting ourselves from the downside as much as we can and getting it done as efficiently as possible. So efficiency comes up a lot. Time is money. It's kind of a seemingly obvious thing, maybe. But when you're actually calculating how much it costs you, our lenders in the room know exactly how much their loans cost per day. So should you. You should know how much your deal is costing you every minute if you can. And remember, the faster you go and the faster you pay them back, the more money you're going to make. So a lot of these things that we'll talk about, these tenets of real estate investing, are kind of basic and maybe seemingly obvious, but I can guarantee you've been doing this for long enough. You've probably violated a couple of these rules. I know I have. And every time something didn't go the way it was supposed to, I look back and it's like, yeah, I knew better than that. I should have just played by my own rules and followed my own rules. They're here for a reason. Remind yourself again. And if you haven't done it before, write all these down because these stuff that will keep you safe and hopefully make you money and keep you from possibly losing money or getting a really good education is the other way to look at that, right? No such thing as failure, just a really good education. So time is money. Prepare early if you're undertaking a renovation project, right? Do your research before you've closed. Don't buy a house like, all right, well, now what should I do with this thing? Don't buy it if you don't know what you're going to do with it. You don't know what your ARV is. You don't know what it looks like. You don't know what the comps look like. You don't know what price point you're trying to reach, how long it'll take you to do that deal, and how you're going to get your stuff. Do all of those things in advance, and then build what sells and not the home of your dreams. It's one thing that I see a lot of people do, not quite right. Renovate a house the way that they would want to live in it with all kinds of like cool, nifty stuff. Cool, nifty stuff is fun, but generally speaking, if you shop open houses, cool and nifty and high-end and fancy isn't typically what sells most. Bread and butter in this area, less than $1 million, is still a bread and butter house. Around here, those kind of like custom whatever finishes in the bathroom aren't really moving the needle. A well-presented house priced properly for the rest of the neighborhood will always sell, given the supply demand curve that we are in right now, right? So first of all, don't do it because you just don't need to. Like, you just don't have to go nuts with a renovation. Clean, new, well presented, always sells. Secondly, you can go too far, and you can go too far beyond what's generally accepted as nice and good, right? If you happen to like jade green tile, that's great. Maybe somebody else in the market might. Everybody likes white, everybody likes beige, everybody likes gray. They may not love it, but everybody likes it. So what we try to do is we renovate for what we think most people will like, maybe someone will love, but not exactly what I would love, right? Would you agree that most of our houses are, after renovation, nice, but not necessarily what you would do for yourself if you were renovating for yourself for the next 10 years, right?
Absolutely. There's something that sells to the majority of the people, right? A lot of times sellers might have the worry of like, why should I spend all this money when the buyer is going to come and change everything themselves anyway? You're really targeting that cookie cutter look that people like, and you're going to get the most amount of interest and offers. Also on this phase, one thing I see a lot with investors, I think takes a couple of years or a good amount of projects for you to get out of it emotionally. Sometimes I see investors look at numbers and really tend towards the higher comps and think, well, that's what I'm going to get, right? And they lean towards that, and then the work starts and they start spending money in areas where they shouldn't. So be realistic, leave room in the budget, leave room in the, and that will come up. But also when you're looking at prices, don't think if there was like one home run that's something you're going to absolutely repeat, right? I see people look at the highest comp and say, well, that's my comp, and ignore the other 9 that's everywhere else.
Very true. All right, so design, drafting, help, plans, purpose. Oh, this is helpful. You probably, if you're renovating kitchens and bathrooms, might need cabinets. Pro tip, your cabinet supplier oftentimes is also at least mid-level designer of stuff. Really helpful for plans and permits if you need it, or if your contractor needs it, rather than go and pay an engineer for it. Have your cabinet company give you an overhead view and a couple of plan views of your kitchens and bathrooms. Your contractors can use them to get permits. It'll help you with your design. They've got to lay it out anyway when they're trying to figure out what all cabinets go in there. They've usually got, within a few clicks, the ability to put some countertops in there and maybe slap a few pictures in here. And oh, it's a mid-century house. Maybe we should look for a mid-century light. Can you show me what that would look like in the thing? They'll help you out for sometimes little to no additional dollars than what you're going to pay for the material that you're buying from them anyway, because a lot of the cabinet suppliers have the designers on staff already. So we usually save a couple bucks on that. I don't have to pay a lot for plans. We do pay for permits, though. Permits, contractors, dumpsters, utilities, all these things need to be ready the day that you close, if not before the day that you close. Don't just buy a house and assume I can roll up and go ahead and get started. Just finished, not finished, we're still not done, but we've at least gotten through the permitting process on a project in the town of Dumfries. Have you heard of the town of Dumfries? It's like south of Woodbridge. It's a town, meaning it's its own municipality, meaning it has its own permitting and development office that's run by one person who also has like 5 other jobs. So we go and like, oh, well, let's go get our permits. Like we always just go online and bang out a permit in 5 minutes, pay your thing. Nope, you have to get on their schedule to look at your thing. Application is like all in writing on paper, like handwritten, fill in the blank stuff. You have to walk it to a counter, leave it there. They'll eventually, get to that part of the pile and look at the thing, like, okay, now give us the money. Like, I already knew I needed to give you the money. Like, then you have to go back down and give them the money. Takes a couple of weeks to get the thing, and then, heaven forbid, you're ready to get your inspection. You have to find the inspector, of which he's also like 5 other things for the town. And he'll tell you, I should be able to get out there in like maybe a week or 10 days or so. So what would normally be in Fairfax County, I can do the work, be ready for an inspection, go today, pull a permit, call it in tomorrow, and be inspecting on Thursday. Took 4 weeks about this. I didn't know anybody, like, oh, you know. Okay, perfect, no big deal. Maybe look that up before you show up and find out how long it might actually take you to get through some of the process. Never assume. Try to do as much work as you can ahead of time.
Mark,
and
people
save yourself an
sometimes
aggravation.
don't want to pull permits because of the cost. What's your advice associated with that?
It might work. Might get away with it, but the cost of permits is really not terribly expensive. What costs is doing work to code so that those permits pass their inspections, right? So the permits aren't what costs you, doing work properly is what costs you. And you can use people who don't pull those permits, either because they legally can't or because they don't want to be held to the standard of doing the work properly, and it might work okay. But when it doesn't, on the off chance that neighbors don't like what you're doing and they decide to make a couple of phone calls, or a buyer doesn't like what you're doing or did, or they have a good agent that says, oh, this is all very beautiful, and now that we're under contract and you have to provide us a house that's legally transferable, where are all the permits for all the work that we saw that you did in this house? Then you could end up spending more than you would have originally spent to have someone who knows what they're doing, do things the right way with the right permits. So
Always get the permits.
99% of the time it could be fine. Yeah.
Always get the permits.
The 1% of the time that it doesn't work out
You
for
make
you.
it sound like, no, yeah, it's okay, no, but get the permits.
Last year, we had a client who I think did 10 listings with us. So, and he was also doing things in Maryland. So he's doing about like probably 20, 30 a year. Last year, you could get away with that. Like I could be upfront with buyers and say, we don't have permits. They know what they're getting into. They'll buy it. They don't care, right? Even that guy who never wants to do permits has changed. Now we're doing permits for everything, right? Because now buyers can be selective. You're not as competitive. And if the agent is smarter on the other side, which I say 70% of agents, when they see something that's renovated, they're going to ask that question and they're going to go and look it up. So you don't want to get there and that's too late.
Yep.
Of course, get on the contract and now the buyer says, where are the permits? Like they knew they were going to say this ahead of time.
Right.
I had a client get called us recently. You want to meet the defendant on a case. It's something I haven't seen recently where the gentleman rehab the house did a beautiful job on it. Made it HGTV style, sold it for a price point of around like 800,000. And like 6 months later, he gets a letter from the county saying that he didn't put permits on the house, right? So which is interesting because the person who bought the house from them is now complaining with their house. Because if you look at it, they only created an LLC just for that house. So they're looking at it, they're like, okay, who do we go after, right? There's no contractor associated with it. So like, okay, we sue the LLC has no assets, it was just built for the house. Next step was, well, if we go to the county and the county goes after them, then we can find out who's associated with us and we can try to. So I just thought it was really interesting that the buyers.
People get upset sometimes for legitimate reasons, illegitimate, doesn't matter why a person may get upset. People get upset all the time about stuff. And if you're gonna end up in a fight, do things as well as you possibly can so that you can defend yourself in the fight, right? So permits are one of those things that's the right thing to do, so.
On the subject of permits, so you say, pulling the permit for everything, so is it, do you like pull a permit for the property, or is it like for each room, each little, I guess, separate, job, like how, I guess, what actually do you need the permits? Like?
Permits are separated by what's called trade, and so the trades are framers, plumbers, electricians, HVAC people. There are a lot of trades that don't require permits in a lot of cases, and sometimes like outside landscaping work doesn't necessarily have a trade associated with it that pulls permits. Roofs in a lot of these areas don't necessarily require a permit, but the big ones do. So if you're doing real framing, structural framing, and you won't know unless you've got an engineer with plans that tells you whether the thing you're doing is structural or not. So back to that thing about getting some help with plans if you need it. And you can find online, if you hire someone who is licensed for whatever it is that they're doing, they should be able to tell you, oh, this would require a permit. But you can also ask. Every jurisdiction around here has a permitting office that will refer you to some version of a code that says you should be building to X code, and you'd be able to check X codes and laws to say this type of work should require a permit. Generally speaking, if you are moving anything from here to there, be it an outlet, a pipe, a faucet, a wall, or whatever, if the thing has moved, it almost certainly requires a permit. You can make an argument sometimes where if you haven't moved it, do I need to get a permit to change the toilet? Just gonna pull the thing out with 2 bolts, put it back down again. If you called the county and asked them, and depending on who answered the phone that day, sometimes they, yeah, we'll come and inspect the toilet that you pulled off. But nobody gets thrown in jail if you don't. Nobody ends up in any kind of real trouble. And where that line is, where it is real trouble, can get a little bit fuzzy. But again, if you're moving stuff from where it used to be to somewhere else, that's almost always permittable work. So that's a good defining line. Yeah.
Yeah, we were in the process of funding a woman who was buying a duplex. And it turned out that the sellers never got permits to turn that single family home into a duplex. So, yeah, it was caught in the appraisal process. And because of that, the sellers weren't able to sell that property. The lender would not underwrite it at all. So.
Yeah, attempting to get permits is a good way to find out, oh, you can't just subdivide one house into 2 in this particular zoning. You'd be violating all kinds of laws that you would
Yeah.
find out when you ask somebody if you could do it or not. And if you just go ahead and do it without asking, you could be in additional layers of trouble, having not only built a thing that wasn't permitted, but can't be permitted because it's not a legal thing to do, period, right? So,
Yeah, I got a story.
Don't do that.
I got a story on that. Yeah, don't assume as an investor that what you see is what you get, right? So what I mean by that, when we, early in my career, there was this, it looked like a 4-unit building, right? Somebody had gone in and they'd taken an old historic duplex and had created 4 units. So there was like 4 electrical panels, like they had framed everything as 4 units. But the tax record said 2 units. And I knew that when I bought the property and I negotiated, there was distress there. They started renovating the house and then they backed out of the deal, right? Because they just ran out of money. Maybe they learned that they couldn't convert it into a 4-unit. I'm not sure what happened, but I got a great price. So all I did was I put the property back on the market and I made sure that I listed it as a 2-unit property. And I said, hey, this is a 2-unit property, and I put it on the MLS as a 2-unit property. And so we had investors come, and an investor bought it. Investor bought the property, all's good. But a week and a half later, I get a call from the other agent, said, hey, you sold this property. We thought it was a quad. It's only a duplex. And we're upset. We're like, well, it was listed as a duplex, right? Yeah, but it looks like a quad, right? But it's listed as a duplex. Well, it's the only time I've ever gone to mediation, right? Like, so they brought me to mediation to work it, and like the mediator was like, yeah, this is like, there's no, I'm like, let's look at the listing. It says it's a duplex, it's a duplex. You assumed it was a 4-unit, your agent, because you're represented by an agent, didn't advise you correctly. So don't assume these things, right? You gotta pull, all the information and figure out, are you buying what you're actually buying, right?
Another big one, Rob, I think you're at the that you see is the ADUs on that. Like that aren't ADUs, the people are Airbnb them out, Airbnb them out. And then you go and buy the house and realize that people just do it with and when you go to buy it, you get a stop work order from the county saying, what is the garage? That's happened to it.
Basement kitchens are oftentimes not legal. Very rarely are they actually legal. In fact, DC is one of the few places you can get that accessory permit for an accessory unit in the basement, and only then under certain circumstances.
It's only the stove or is it?
What makes it is the stove. Yeah.
Yeah, so
and
what I've done
sometimes
as an
the
agent,
refrigerator.
I've
So-
taken the stove out and then put
Take
it
it
back.
What you do after you buy it's up to you, but you can't sell it with the stuff plugged in, looking like a kitchen.
Has anybody in here ever bought anything and then they realized that what they bought, or what they thought they bought, wasn't the thing that they bought.
So
Yeah, go ahead, tell the story.
The same story where I bought a property, a plot. And, when I did my due diligence, I was told it was grandfathered in.
Mm,
But when I actually started to go and work on it, that was not the case.
mm,
That time period had lapsed. And I was no longer qualified as a plot, so I had to convert it into.
ah, shoot. Where was that, Baltimore?
Huh?
Where was
No,
that?
it was down in Hampton Roads, Virginia.
Okay. Okay, what can we learn from that? Can we, was there a place where you could have found out ahead of time that it wasn't no longer what? I guess you took it at face value, somebody told you, hey, it's grandfather.
No, I had called the city, but I've realized people at the city give conflicting information.
And they're allowed to be wrong. How about that?
I even have my information in writing versus having a verbal conversation and make sure, like, so I can go back and say, no, I have this in writing saying this, you have to honor this.
Mm.
And they're like, we didn't have it in writing, so.
The government is allowed to not know what they're talking about, and it happens more often than you might imagine.
I'm going to
Okay,
the
do that.
courthouse too, like yesterday, I was with a big investor, and he had just bought a big property on the river last year, and I didn't represent him, but it was our former VFW and burnt, and so we wanted to make it a recreation area. He thought it was zoned to ag, and the town, he even just got an SUP to do like recreational stuff, and on their application, it's like ag, but he got his tax bill and it says it's zoned industrial.
Mm,
So he comes in and he is like, have all these papers from where the town in 2013, there was a new plat, says from industrial to ag, because the VFW wouldn't have a flea market. But the VFW is also a nonprofit, so they never paid taxes. And that information was just never recorded.
mm,
So he left in a very panic mode, because in our jurisdiction, you have a town and a county, and they aren't always like best friends.
mm.
So it was a lot of confusion, and me texting town council and texting the town manager, because they were just spinning him back and forth between the two, but reality it just hadn't been recorded in 2013, so they were able to get it corrected.
But he was freaking out.
He was freaking out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, there's a big difference between industrial and ag,
Mm,
And it can take a minute to sort all that out.
right.
Back to item number one, time is money. Figure this stuff out before you show up, looking to swing hammers and start doing stuff. Know what you've bought, know what you can do, and know what you intend to do, and preferably have the permission to do it before you actually show up and start getting dirty.
Have you guys ever run into survey issues? Was that, you ever had any kind of survey issues?
So, last month, I closed one guys being done for this. And then owner was saying this, that like multiple, like 3, 4 small garage, not garage kind of store. And so when we do this survey, we found that one is not, that land is not existing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, we do the like, the trade and just, my buyer is physically go and see for the closing, so we get the closing. We go physically see where exactly the boundary line, it's like that, so that who is more sale is not coming.
Interesting. Yeah, you gotta do your due diligence. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes of my life was with one of my closest friends that I grew up with. And it was this house in McLean. And it was this beautifully manicured lot with this beautiful house that's on there. And I asked for the plat, they sent the plat is different than the survey, right? Like, they look different, so I'm interpreting the plat, and I'm like, yeah, this looks like everything, right? So we settled. And what came out of it was that big, beautiful lot that looked like one manicured lot, right? Was owned by the same person, but it was split in the middle. And they were only selling the side that had the house with part of the land, and the other piece that was manicured to look like it was part of that lot. And they didn't talk about it in the listing, they didn't do any of that. And I told my client, get the survey. But I didn't press, like, get the survey. I was like, oh, you should get the survey, right? So we settled, and we come to find out. That land that she thought that she had purchased wasn't part of the sale. And I remember I felt so bad, it's like, it all worked out, we're like all close friends, it all worked out. But I was prepared to buy the house from her, right? And pay for her kids' college fund for the next like 15 years, because I was like, that is a huge mistake, right? So, point being, do your due diligence, ensure you understand what you're buying, or if you're representing a client, what they're buying, right? Luckily, they still love me, they send me text messages inviting me over to their house all the time, so.
And
It
get
all worked
errors
out.
and emissions insurance.
What's that?
And get errors and emissions.
Yeah, no,
insurance.
well, yeah, they, you know, it all worked out.
You
It all-
know, rather than what's where they're.
Yeah, I mean, it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
right now, this person's contacted us, the off market house, it's, in front of us, he wants to sell this by 240. And one thing I've learned about this swiping is like, be careful, right? So we're sending someone out for the septic, we're sending someone out for the foundation, we're sending out somebody, it's like, why would you sell it for 110,000 below fair market? Why not just hire someone like yourself and list it? You know, and so.
well, I think you learned that lesson when you bought that house that didn't have any water.
Yeah, that was one, yeah, or the staff that I got on Facebook group, that for 225, the AR was 275, and I had an alternative system, for you know, for $60,000. So my point is that, yeah, I just did it, we should be.
Do your homework, yep.
Measure
Yeah,
twice,
this
couple.
survey, one of our agents, I think they're actually closing Thursday, they were supposed to close like a month ago. And the day of closing, the agent's like, we have a little problem, we need to get the builder who, him and his brother, builder agent. You know, they had bought lot 44, but when he wrote the paperwork from the time he had the survey, he'd accidentally put lot 42.
Ooh.
So they realized when they went to get the 911 address, they didn't own the lot that the house is completely on.
Ruh-roh.
So we were actually,
Did the builder do?
no, just this fact, yeah. So we were in Virginia Beach and everyone's like, how does that happen? And I was like, so I'm on the phone with him, like, he's like, I wrote 42 instead of lot 44. So you did your foundation location and everything. And so he's texting me and he sends me a screenshot of a lot. And he's like, how would you find this lady? And I was like, look her up on Facebook or send her a letter. And he's like, no, I need to know how to find her right now. She lives in Pennsylvania. And he said his brother, who's the builder, was like growing up outside the truck. And they like get in the vehicle and they drive straight to Pennsylvania. And I don't know if they told her they built a house, but he's like, we just struck a deal. She sold us a lot in the backyard. We have a contract. And they closed on it. And they're gonna close on the house on Thursday.
Oh my God.
I'm like, did you tell her you built the house?
No. Details.
Yeah.
All's well that is well. Measure twice, cut once.
She's like, I wonder why they paid me so much money for my lot.
Well, these are much smaller stakes here, but home warranty, maybe think about it. It saved me a few $1,000s one time. We like to give home warranties to buyers anyway, because it gives them somebody else to call if something breaks after they bought the house. But also it would cover you. You buy a home warranty while you're renovating, it'd actually cover your HVAC. Don't be like fraudulent and buy something that you know is broken and then try to get it covered. But we've had like leaks and things happen that came up. We didn't know they were there. And it was covered by a home warranty and saved us a ton of money that was gonna get bought for an eventual buyer anyway. So tiny pro tip. All right, renovate right. How do we renovate right? Oh, yeah, do yourself a favor, say hello to the neighbors.
Question on
Yeah.
that? I'm trying to think through that.
Yeah.
So when you're renovating, so usually the warranty is more like appliances and stuff. For the most part, it's appliances, utilities, mechanicals.
Yeah.
When I'm renovating, 90% of the time that all goes.
Mhm.
So are you saying you've got situations where you keep them?
Yeah, so here's what was covered the one time that I used it. Renovating the house, inside of the house. Bought a home warranty that we intended to just transfer to the eventual buyer. And closed on the sale, renovated the house, sold to new buyer. And it happened fairly quickly. Like the whole transaction took like 90 days. That's important because water bills tend to take more than 90 days to come out, especially during a transfer. I bought it. They have to know that I own it. They have to put me on the thing. They have to go and read the thing. And then by the time they read the thing with a new owner, you might not get your first water bill for like 4 months sometimes. So before we ever got a water bill, bought, renovate, sold the house. New owners get the first water bill and it's like $1,500. Like, oh, what's going on here? The water guy comes out and is like, yeah, you've got a broken water line underneath the slab. And we were able to make the claim on the home warranty that covered that item because it was coverable under the thing on behalf of the new owner. And I think we ended up making the claim because, oh, I know what it was. They didn't get the bill. We got the bill. We did get the bill, but it was like right before closing, like within days of closing. So we ended up having to make a claim for the home warranty and they covered it. So they
Right.
probably wouldn't have covered work if like we caused a leak while we're renovating the inside of the house. They would, they do come out, they'll come out and look like, yeah, we're working on this thing. Doesn't cover that. But it would cover normal systems and things that you haven't otherwise touched if those systems fail and they're covered by the warranty. So that was how that happened to work out on that
Which
particular case.
company did you buy it from?
Ooh, that one in particular, I don't know. Who do we use for, is it Super now? Super Home Warranty, I think is the.
Is it
company.
recent? Is it the past 3 years?
No, this is more than 3 years ago, I think that we had the claim that happened on it.
So probably, what's that orange one? Home Shield?
HWA, Home
Yeah.
Shield,
HW.
maybe,
HW.
maybe.
So pro tip on that, like as agents, we order free home warranty for our sellers. So maybe as an investor, you already have a listing agreement signed with your agent that you're going, I'm going to renovate this and sell it in 3 months. They can get free home warranty for you. Now, if you go to use it, it actually does cost a little bit, but you're not paying the full amount, but you still get the full home warranty.
Yeah, there might be, because Teresa, I would imagine there might be. I mean, are you always replacing like the HVAC? Right,
Honestly, all the ones I've ever done, in 17, I kept the HVAC. What, with the water heater once.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you she
So there's not a
got,
lot of exposure then to cover, right?
Right,
Yeah.
But it does cover those systems if they do happen to.
I'd say the majority. The ones that we've done, we've never changed the systems. And so we'll always put the warranty in place, so even if you're in the middle of the renovation, the system dies, then we could just then pay the deductible and it gets covered.
And what we see right now with buyers on the market, like I see a lot of homes that are renovated, like the buyers care about appliances, but not as much about the AC unit when it's older. So I do see a lot of investors not replacing AC units and be fine with that in this market.
Yeah, every market.
I think I've got one I need to go buy. I'm just thinking I've got an old AC unit I gotta cover.
You say it as it's like 95 outside.
You're right. Yeah, I probably ought to do that. Yeah, introduce yourself to the neighbors. Stuff happens on construction sites and you want them to call you and not the county or the police or anybody else. Just do yourself a favor. Don't avoid an angry neighbor if you can stop them before they get really angry, right? Just tell them I'm gonna be working next door. Hopefully adding some value to the neighborhood and selling to some nice new friendly neighbors that you'll be able to see soon and increase the value of your neighborhood. But in the meantime, anything weird goes on, here's my card, give me a call. Every once in a while, people will call like, oh, the guys have got the dumpster full and there's stuff falling over. And then you deal with whatever their complaint is. And we've had people call like, wow, that looks really nice. Are you like looking to like do that again? Absolutely. We've gotten referrals from what were the not quite sure that they were okay with us neighbors, that you answer people's concerns to help you out.
So I have a property on the contract right now and the investor they remodeled this in like 2 weeks, right? Imagine how much noise they made. And we went on the contract on Friday. I got a call yesterday from the HOA saying, hey, we don't think you changed the floors, you did this, we don't think you got an architectural permit for it. So the neighbors got upset, waited for it to go on the contract, and then all of this happened. And why it happened? Because the person who owns it wasn't there, and one of his contractors got to an argument with the neighbors. So imagine if they had the relationship ahead of time, all of this would have been avoided.
I have a guy in DC, a friend of mine, he's looking up in the northeast. And they have to be able to use electricity, they're gonna offer him $300. He used to do $300 a day, and it wasn't, right, $300 per month. So he got mad or whatever else, stopped work order on his window within like a week. Another house that, in Alexandria, neighbors didn't like the project, they called washing gas, and said that they smelled gas next door, and got the house shut off in the middle of winter. When we went there. So I mean, really pay attention to what Mark's saying, like, if you guys can be friendly with the neighbors, it will cut down half of your power.
Pays to get along, very little goes well in an adversarial situation with a neighbor where you're trying to.
I got a call once from somebody being upset about the paint, the color of the paint, saying, it looks like you copied me. I don't like that. It's just about the relationship. They're very upset in the beginning, but like couple phone calls later, they love the owner, right? Because he knows how to talk to them, buy him something nice. Like, there's nothing you can do, and it looks nice, but it's just about the relationship.
Oh my God.
Flattery and all that.
And they called.
Lockdown contractors with good scopes of work, time invested on specifics around your materials and your schedules and your expectations will probably pay you dividends later. All of that paperwork really isn't there for when things go well. It's there for when there's a disagreement, right? So without getting completely obnoxious, just think about the stuff that you'd be upset about if it went wrong and maybe work that into your agreement somehow. And more detail is usually better. So I don't mind if the scope of work says you're to use this tile, this floor, this SKU in this room, but not that. A good contractor will tell you as much about what they're not doing and what's not included as what is, right? For everybody's benefit. I don't want there to be any misunderstandings about what we're doing and not doing, but help yourself out and try to work those things out when you're signing up a person. Signing up a GC, in fact, if you want to do it the most efficient way, right? There's a couple of different ways to renovate a house. The cheapest, most time intensive, and to my mind, least best use of your time is you go in there and try to learn how to lay an LVP floor, and you go in and try to figure out how to swap out a sink and a toilet and a cabinet and a countertop. Second to that, you can hire individual people to do those things, get an electrician to do the electrical stuff, plumber to do the plumbing stuff, concrete guy, a framer, a roofer, or whatever, or get a general contractor who will manage all of those other people for you for a fee. It costs more to do it that way, right? It costs the least to do it yourself. It costs the next most to hire individual people from individual companies to do the thing they're good at. Costs the most to hire one person who does all that stuff with those other people as needed for you. But again, we don't have agreements and arrangements and things for when things go well. When things go wrong, whose fault is it that I've got a hole or a leak or a thing that's broken or a thing that's not working right now? If you've got 5 different people in the house, they'll all go every single time.
Yeah, GC is the insurance policy.
One guy, it's your insurance policy. I have one person to get mad at. I have one person to chase down. I have one person to figure out if they've been paid or not. It makes your life immeasurably easier to have that one single source of truth for, is this project going well? Yes, it costs you more money, but it also saves you a lot of time and aggravation. Time being money, right? That you can then use to go do more deals. So while you could certainly save thousands of dollars on the average renovation by getting down on your hands and knees and learning to lay hardwood, wouldn't your time be better spent hiring somebody who knows how to do that, taking the free hours of that week that you're now not learning to spend installing hardwood and go finding another deal or working on your marketing or going to a networking event? That's where you're going to make the most money per hour, making phone calls, sending emails, getting in conversations, not trying to save a couple bucks, installing your own thoughts. That writ large is what general contractors do for you for a fee. Speaking as a general contractor who would do that for you for a fee, obviously we have a vested interest in that. But projects get done faster. Clients have less to do. I'm about to tell you in a minute that you should check your job. But if you don't want to be checking your job every couple of days, hiring a trusted, reputable, vetted, referred contractor who will do those things for you will save you that time as well, or time you can spend finding other deals, right? That's what we want you to do. Yeah.
So I just wanted to also say, you know, just check the person's credentials and their licensing. I was speaking with a woman in Maryland and she said, oh, yeah, you know, my uncle is going to be the GC, he's licensed. And I said, well, can you send me his license number? And she sent me his EIN number. And I'm like, no, the license number that, and after about the third time of me asking, she stopped like picking up my phone calls. So I figured that there was no license there. So just, you know, double check, get like documentation from the person.
Yep. Yeah, and we can get deep into the weeds on vetting contractors and licensing and insurance and subs and how all of that works. It's a longer conversation, so anybody wants to kind of know how any of that works, we'll talk about how that process works. But yeah, again, like everything, trust but verify. What am I getting in my tradesman? What am I getting in my house? What am I getting in this deal? Don't just take it at face value when somebody says
Is
they
it-
can do something.
Is it deport.com?
Virginia is dport.gov, I think, but if you just Google dport license lookup, it's anybody with any license in Virginia.
Yep.
Every state, so DC and Maryland is different, but it's a simple Google search, like Maryland contractor license, and the website will come up.
Yeah, you could go in, you could put in their information, it'll tell you whether they have any violations, it'll tell you whether or not the license is active or not active, complaints, all that stuff.
Yep.
And like Mark said, I think the biggest reason for this is do only what only you can do, right? Like I can hire a GC to do this for me, but only I can find deals. Or what's the highest dollar per hour activity? What's the highest thing I can do? That I'll do that as the CEO of my business, and I'll hire a GC to do that. So I won't just save money, I'll make more money.
For sure. All right. We do not get homeowner burn, so we get a little deep into the weeds in the process, but technically, you as the investor, owner of the house in certain jurisdictions in this area can get permits in your name as opposed to the contractor who's doing the work. I recommend you probably don't do that, at least not initially. If you're hiring someone to do the work, have them get the permit, because then if someone ever does come back later and say they're not happy with how that work got done, be they an inspector, an agent, a buyer, or whomever, the person who pulled the permit is the one most responsible for resolving the issue. You're still responsible, you're in the chain of title, that is part of rehabbing. People get mad, they go after anybody they can get at, but you've just made it that much harder to deflect the anger towards the person who maybe did the bad work if the permit's in your name as opposed to the name of the contractor who actually did the work. The reason that you might be asked not to would be because that contractor doesn't want to stand up for that work, doesn't have the legal ability to pull that permit that you might need, or doesn't intend to be around if a problem were to ever come up. So it's usually a pretty red flag if they're not pulling a permit. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you, if you hire a GC, how often are you checking up on that project?
Depends on how much you trust your GC. I know people wwho toss the keys and say, I expect it to look good. Here's $75,000 coming when you're done. We somewhere between that and a couple of times.
Lisa would tell you daily.
Yeah, it depends on what you're doing. On how heavy the work is.
It's sort of a follow-up.
That's a good middle ground, right? First time you've worked with somebody, first job, 3 times a week is probably a good amount of time to step in and make sure that somebody's showing up and they're there when they're supposed to be, working every day. Everybody knows contractors are famous. We'll get it done in 6 months and it takes like 12. You'll know if after the first week or two, you show up on a random Tuesday at 12 and there's nobody there. Ring, ring, where are you, right? So if it starts off bad, that's another pro tip. If it starts off bad, it never gets better. So your contractor never magically decides to start performing like 3 weeks from now, right? So if it's an ugly, dirty, late job site on day 1, it will only get worse for the next 180 days, depending on how big your job is, right?
You've got a deposit in the GC at that point, what do you do?
Yeah, so first of all, you're always not trying to get too far ahead of anybody, but as the contractor, I don't want to do free work, so I want to make sure that I've collected enough of a deposit, a draw payment or whatever for it to make sense. As the property owner, same thing, you don't want to give someone too much money that they're no longer feeling they need to answer your call. So that's coming up with that reasonable draw schedule and have that draw schedule based on actual milestones, not like, give me $10,000 a week for 5 weeks for our $50,000 job. How about we do it? You'll get X amount of dollars when I see materials on my job. Great, you've spent money. I see it on the job site. You've earned something. You get X amount of dollars when you pass that inspection. You know, you got to do it. So when you've done that, that means work has been done. There are pipes in the wall. You did it properly. Great. Past that, you get a thing. Drywall, flooring, cabinets, countertop. Pick a landmark that's, we can all agree it's here or it's not. It's done or it isn't. Once that happens, that's when you release your draw. What you do if you've already released money and you're not happy will depend on what your contract says. What are your rights to terminate and seek some kind of refund? So that gets into kind of terms and conditions with your contract. Most of them aren't very well written. I hired an attorney to do mine, and they're fair. They're not unfair to anyone. But that's also what you pay for. You pay for someone who's done it and has hired someone else to put together a thing that is fair. And if somebody told me, well, I need to have an attorney look at it, please go nuts. Pay your guy $1,500 to look at the thing and tell me what they're not happy with. And if it's something we can work out, work it out.
So a
But
story
those are
from one of
investments,
our lender partners, and they go and inspect the sites, and there's one investor who has multiple job sites, and after they're inspecting a couple, the guy notices from the bank that I'm seeing the same material. Like, he realizes this is the same flooring. This is not the different boxes of flooring. They just moved it from one job to another just to get the draw, right?
Mm.
So be careful with that.
Wow.
Shame.
I think that was a good catch on his.
But, all right, so homeowner permits is a thing, contingency budgets, right? 10% minimum, 15% better. You're renovating a property. Something's gonna happen, something will go wrong. I would say minimally 10 to 15% in your back pocket for the something is a good place to start. And that's a really easy thing to say. I tell you, most people say, okay, Mr. Contractor guy, what's it gonna cost to renovate? That's not 75,000. Cool, 75,000. That goes in the thing. Oh my, it's $76,000. Where am I gonna come up with the extra grand? Always be thinking safety factor. Add for something, right? Don't focus on the number on the paper that you signed. Focus on your safety. Focus on having a backup plan to your backup plan. And money is always a good backup plan. So have more than you need. Know what you're gonna get, right? Yeah, it's not, you shouldn't be planning for a contingency for not getting what you think you should be paying for. That comes back to a couple slides before, have a fairly specific scope written out where everybody understands what they're getting. A contingency budget is for a contingency. We didn't know. We opened up your floors to put the new floor in, your subfloor is terrible. And you got like bad rotten choice over there. Couldn't have known that that was there. Got to fix it, got to pay for it. So have a budget. for it.
Guy Mark Garcia, he's like one of those amazing contractors, like the finish are incredible. And he always goes, 125,000, everything's included. We everything. Okay, you go to open like the front door, like the store door, you might throw this video since like 1985. So that was it. Not your fault, yeah, it's my fault, it's Mark, in the detail.
Everybody's everything is different, right? So write it down. This is the thing about checking in on the job. You, partner, somebody who represents the owner should inspect your job site at least several times a week, daily during some of the really important stuff. When you're putting tile down on the floor, that's going to be real expensive to redo if you're not happy with it. When you're covering things up with drywall, probably a pretty good time to make sure that the lights are where the light's supposed to be, the switch is where the switch is supposed to be. You got the sink where the sink's supposed to be. Check the things that are happening at the crucial points more frequently.
Have you ever had the wrong thing installed in the wrong place or the wrong something happened that, yeah, tell us, Teresa.
So my rule is I'm on the job site, I'm minimum 3 days a week. One is scheduled time with whoever's running the project for me, GC or project manager. And the other two, the job every, so they never know what I'm talking. You know, afternoons and evenings, different days of the week, I make sure there's nothing repetitive about it. Because that way, all week they're going, oh God, she could show up. And one of the times I show up, I always have food, so the workers are actually looking forward to me showing up. But I missed it on one of those random days, and my two big vanities came in. And one of them was glass, big pieces of glass front in the doors, clearly for the master bedroom. And the other was a similar double vanity that was going into the hall, which we found would clearly be for the children. And also in the one that the master had, the vanity raised sink, what it was called, the
Vessel.
right, the vessel sinks, so kids can't right get up over a vessel sink, so it was obvious which went where. Except guess what the guys did, I wasn't there and they didn't bother to ask me, they put them in the opposite bathroom, so then I said, well, that's okay, we'll just switch them, and then it dawned on me. One had the pipes coming in from the side and one had the pipes coming in from the back, and I couldn't switch them. So it was a problem, but what I find, and it shocks me, I have the most detailed statements of work you can never imagine. And I'm there 3 days a week, you think that this would never happen, but every single time I show up, there's a new question that we didn't anticipate. And if I'm not there, and the workers don't even really want to ask on the ones where I have a GC, they don't even want to ask, because I don't know, they don't want to look stupid or something. But if I'm there, they will ask, and it will get done the way I want it done. And if I'm not there, they guess.
Yeah. I was renovating this Little River house that we own for ourselves, not like an investment. And they're putting in a mini split, right? You guys know what mini splits are, right? So we're putting in two mini splits, this one in the bedroom and I remember I called the contractor the day before and said, where are you gonna put the mini split? And he's like, oh, we're gonna put it to the side of the window. And I'm like, well, it's a bigger window. It's an extended window. Is there enough space? He's like, yeah, I measured it out. There's enough space there. Right? So I was like, okay, well, you're the contractor. I trust you, right? So it just happened to be there the next day. Guy shows up to put the mini split in. And I'm looking at the window of where the window would extend to, and I'm looking where he put in the mini split. And I'm like, do you know that there's a window that's coming in here? And he's like, no. And I'm like, yeah, there's gonna be a window. So somewhere in translation, Rob, like specifically documented it, that we ordered the bigger window, we knew where the mini split was gonna go. Somehow that all got missed, right? Luckily, I was there to then troubleshoot the problem, and we put it in a better place, right? But that's one of the reasons why you need to be at your job site all the time, because you don't want to show up and all of a sudden the mini splits in the wrong place, or the vanity's in the wrong place, or like I remember one time I walked in a project with Mark, and half of the house was gone. And it wasn't supposed to be gone.
That's a particularly dramatic example.
They demolished the wrong house.
Stuff happens. So contingency budget, right?
Sometimes
Sometimes
No, we're gonna leave it at that.
maybe more than 15.
There's a great video where Mark and I are looking at like where we're at a job site, and this is I think it might still be on the website. We're at a job site, we're kind of like looking at the job site. Well, that was the house. We showed up and literally the contractor taking the entire property down.
So it's supposed to be a pop top. And with the pop top, you keep the first floor wall, just add another floor above, and it was an older brick house. And somebody we were opening like the back, and there was an addition on the back too, so like a wall got opened, and then it got in like the way like the brick kind of behaved, and like, all right, well, we got to redo this bit, so like, all right, I'm gonna take this out too. I'm not real happy about that either. Now that's cracked. Well, let's just cut this bit out. Well, let's just cut it to the corner, be fine. So they cut it to the corner, and another guy saw him just cutting and cutting and cutting. Like, oh, we're cutting. And so we showed up on the only thing that was left was the fireplace. Everything else is gone.
And Mark was like, you look like, okay.
And so now in that video, we're like squinting. It was supposed to be like a nice interior construction shot. Roof is gone, the walls are gone. Yeah.
Behind the scenes.
Champ, he was like, okay, I guess we're building a new house.
We built another level, and it
came out
got it.
well.
It was 2016, so you screw up and you make more money 6 months later. It worked out. Maybe don't do that today. I don't know if that's gonna work 6 months from now, but it worked out. No. That was the GC's problem. I wasn't the GC on that. I was the customer on that particular project. So, yeah, so we worked it out. You,
We
you
became
work it out.
friends, we're all friends.
We're still friends. You work it out. All right, get the look. So we're gonna renovate something to sell, right? Upper middle end of your target market based on comps. As Ali was saying, we don't go for the highest absolute sale in the neighborhood if you can help it. Sometimes that is your niche. Want to do baller houses or super unique mid-century houses in super unique neighborhoods. You have to make some choices. You have to make some design calls. But most of the time, we're kind of keeping it to the middle of the road. What
Be
else?
realistic on your comps.
Always about realism. We'll talk about pricing in a second. Neutral, generally on trend. You can find out what trends are, house, Pinterest, HGV. Interior designer that can help with colors and selections. Another way to kind of leverage a thing that you might also be doing anyway. Staging is a thing that we always recommend that people do. Stagers are often either interior designers or associated with some kind of interior design type of functionality. So if you're going to stage anyway, have those people also consult on paint colors and some designs. And hey, come out and give me the quote for staging. While you're here, what color would you paint the room? What color would you stain the hardwood floors that we're refinishing? And just get some free advice from people that you're going to pay for another service anyway. A good way to get free help on what's popular. Features and finishes worth considering. Oh, so these are just things that I think for the money kind of add a little bit of punch to the look of the house. Railings. Railings for what they cost to do. Get rid of the old like white roundy spindly rails and install the wrought iron kind of square, a little bit more modern, fun little basket, little weavy things you can get in the wrought iron rails. And then refinishing or replacing the actual wood on the rail really makes an entrance for your, if that's where your stairs are, look much, much nicer, newer, and more modern for not a lot of money based on what it costs. And oh, yeah, stage, right? So I've told the story before about staging and how it works, right? The reason we stage, renovate a house, don't do anything to it, but just put the new stuff in it, leave it absolutely empty, and then go sit at your own open house and then see what happens. What do you think happens when you have an empty, nicely renovated house with nothing in it to look at besides all the stuff that got done?
I'm gonna just look at the imperfect, and we'll look at the walls and the ceiling and the crack and.
They gotta look at something, right? So even in your freshly renovated, all new stuff everywhere house, if you don't have anything else to look at, people will decide what they think exactly about the way you laid out the island for the thing and.
Furniture just
how-
makes the biggest difference. Furniture and like the right aesthetics throughout just create a feeling, and that feeling is what drives buyers to make offers.
It
Buying
allows people
houses-
to imagine living in the house instead of imagining if they would have made the same choices for stuff, right?
When we renovate a home, like a lot of these things are logical, like here are the numbers, here's what we should do. But buying a house is emotional. You walk into a house, you see it, you fall in love, and forget all the numbers. I just want it. I'm just gonna pay what it takes, right? So you want people to imagine themselves living there. You want them to come in, it's a warm feeling, stage it, like have certain like, warm color light bulbs, everything matches, a certain feeling when somebody comes to it. So staging is not an expense, it's an investment. It's gonna make you more money. There are homes that instead of a price drop, we've staged it. So you're gonna price drop like 10K or 25K and you spend like $3,000 stage it and it sells for the same price.
And it's not cheap. Staging is several $1,000s for even a decent townhouse stage. Service we provide, by the way, CAZA Construction, we will provide staging in addition to renovation services. But my margin on it isn't really nearly as good as it is on the construction. It just costs a lot of money to buy the furniture and pay dudes to move it around all the time where a place got broken and clean stuff that got dirty. But it's so worth doing. Sometimes I will tell people, look, if the budget is 50, then give me 45 to do work and hold back 5 for staging. And really stage everything that you possibly can. It will make almost as much difference as anything else at that point. That delta, if I could spend another $5,000 on a fancier hardwood on the floor or replacing the doors inside the house instead of leaving the old doors. Leave the old stuff and stage and you'll be much better off from somebody who really doesn't have much of a dog in that fight. I'll still provide it for you and I'll give you a little bit of margin. I'll make a little bit of money on it. But not as much. It's a $3,000 stage for a townhouse, but it's worth it. You'll get your money back. Yeah.
Just help buyers think the house a lot like that. It's so much easier to see in the
guy will fit there, and there's a bed there. But, you know, other guests, oh, queen size maybe, full size, right, second nightstand over there, right?
Rooms look bigger with staging, right? Because when there's nothing in it, it actually looks smaller.
For sure.
And, you know, investors, we look their own agents, look their own all the time, we kind of get it, but a lot of these buyers, right? We're gonna have maybe 5, 10 homes.
Yep, just
Very excited about it.
shop an open house, your own, somebody else's. Look and listen to what happens in an open house when there's nothing in it versus one where there is, it's different. That's why I say do it. All right. How do we get these houses sold then? Pre-marketing before completion. We've sold a few of them before they actually got done. Happens all the time in new construction, right? Builders oftentimes list the house before they're finished. And we'll even occasionally offer the buyer the opportunity to maybe select a couple things, tweak a couple things. But even if you're not doing that, there's so little inventory right now. It's a pretty good feeling to know that your deal is already done. And you know what you're getting for it to even finish the thing. Just tell the people this is what it is going to look like. This is what we do intend to use. But if you want to lock this down before anybody else, give me X, now, and you can have your house sold. You can't have your money. You have to actually finish it, assuming that's what you agreed to do, before you can actually close on it. But we work with a lot of sellers who actually
so-
sell before.
As an agent, I'm a little biased towards this, right? Like I want the property to be on the market for a little bit, right? Not like too long, but also not just for a day or a couple hours. Sometimes people brag saying, hey, I sold this in 2 hours. That's probably not a good thing. You didn't create as much competition as you could have. But if you really know the comps and if you really know the neighborhood, like we did one in Ashburn where an offer came in that we're like, we're not going to get anything better, right? So it's that knowing that, okay, this is the best offer I'm going to get. Whenever that is it during my coming soon marketing, or is it when I'm on the market? Ideally, if I'm on the market and I'm going on the market Thursday and I can wrap it up by Monday, that's good. Sometimes you have an offer that's really good that wants to be accepted right away or during coming soon. If not, I want to stay on the market 3 to 4 days, not just one day. And it's that balance of how do you actually keep people interested and not lose them.
Good question. Not to sell. You realize that Christian, you pass it.
Well,
You do that ahead of
motivated by
time.
the profit, but I know that there's gonna be profit because I analyzed the deal before I bought it, right?
And you factored in all those numbers.
And you factor in all those numbers.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it exists on the website now, but if not, I think we're revamping and maybe one of the first things we'll have, we don't sell a lot of stuff here. But spend a couple of minutes working on a spreadsheet that works for me to help kind of guide thoughts around that and thinking about how many months am I going to be on this job? How many square feet is the house? I spend an average of this many dollars a square foot on the typical renovation. If it's a level 1, 2, or 3, it tells me how much to assume that a renovation might cost. Put all that stuff into a spreadsheet, and then that means that I want to make this, if I want to return this on my cash, I need to pay no more than this for the house. Do that, right? I don't just look at the thing, oh, there's a cool one on Zillow. That probably will work, right? This is a risk reward exercise. This is a protection exercise. That's why I really don't get super jazzed about the house anymore. It is still fun to renovate houses, but what I'm really doing is I'm making money when I buy this thing. If I don't buy it properly, none of the rest of this stuff matters. So the way that you know that you're buying it properly is to do exactly what you're thinking about, is think of all of these things in advance, your commissions, your taxes, your utilities, your HOAs, your trash, the contingency, all of that stuff, bake it in there. And then here's where I need to buy my house. And I'm going to make as many offers as I need to make until somebody says yes at this, right? Because most deals aren't deals. But we hang around until we find one that is. That's the business.
Mark, do you reverse engineer when you do that? So you say, okay, here's the house, I can sell it for this, and then you go backward on it? Like you said,
For like what to spend on a renovation, you mean?
like I feel like market pro now has shifted their investment strategy, or now they're engineering, wholesaling. They're basically coming up, like, say, house price, we sell for 50. We believe that rehab competency at 100, and we believe that the vertical wholesale need to, they'll be happy to get $50,000.
Mhm.
Do you do a similar type of strategy?
Yeah, it's the same thing. they're doing the same math I am, just with a wholesaler. You need to figure out what I'd be willing to pay and then pay less than that, because that's your spread, right? That's what you'll make. But yeah, all I'm concerned about is what do I make? What's my return? What's my risk adjusted return on the thing? And then as a wholesaler, your job is to figure out what I'm thinking and buy it for less.
But Mark, your renovations are amazing, I've seen your picture. Do you say, okay, I know my renovations are gonna be amazing, so whatever the highest comp is, I'll buy it, see it like 50,000?
Oh, yeah, no. Not now, not ever. It's certainly not now. But really not ever. I've never assumed that we were gonna be the highest sale in the neighborhood. It happens, probably happens more often than it doesn't, but you can't assume it. That's just grading, right? If we get a minute, we can look at this listing that we had. It was just gonna be okay. It ended up selling with multiple offers for higher than the list price, and that made it a really okay, decent deal. But otherwise, it was just a thin deal, and sometimes you just do a thin deal, just to have something to do. But I do know going in what it's supposed to be.
I have a story on that where an investor renovated a home in Springfield. All the comps are like 450 and he's like 500. And now his condition is really way nicer than all the comps. But it's just not realistic, right? But he's pushing for it. Listen, let's list it for 500. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Gets an offer for 500 with a VA loan, 20,000 gap coverage. It appraised for 450. He got his 20,000, but he lost money on it, right? So don't count on that. Even if buyer wants to pay, it might not appraise, you know?
So I had a real quick story, this happened a few weeks ago, within Park Royal on Mountain Lake. So I had this house being purchased for 140, got lucky on it. We looked at the 420, we got an offer for 420, about it, appraisal. The appraisal came in at 330,000. Again, the whole thing is 420. We do a conference call with the appraiser, because we do a lot of houses in Foster County, Orange County. So I knew if I got the right appraiser, I was gonna get my 420. You know what the appraiser said on the Zoom call up? Him and his boss, he said, we know that you paid 140. And you should be happy at 330, you're making about 35% margin. I'm gonna do that for it.
Oh, wow.
The appraiser saying that on a Zoom call with us as a buy side agent. Suffice to say, they fired that lender, we got someone to come in. But we're not making the appraiser looking at what he paid for it.
Human nature. It's hard to sometimes fight human nature, right?
We should go a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want to look at examples.
Let's
Yep.
let's go.
All right, use an agent,
Okay.
right? You wanna sell your house for the most money possible, same reason, use general contractor, they know what they're doing. You spend more time going to getting another deal, same thing using an agent, they know what they're doing, they will sell your house for the most money and get you the best terms, protect you from downside. They earn what they charge. Price to sell, be aware price bends and use fear of loss. That's a little bit about what you were just talking about before, Ali.
Yeah, so price plans, people get pre-approved and searched in 25,000 increments, like 500,000, 525. Nobody goes and says, hey, like stop to their agent and says, stop my search at 532, right? So when you price a property, let's say a comps where, like you look at the comps and it's like 530, 535. The decision you're making is, am I at 550, which you probably are not, or am I at 525? Somebody who gets pre-approved at 525 can afford to pay 530 and 535. But if their search stops here, they don't even see this property. So based on the competition, sometimes smarter to go a little bit below. We've A/B tested this at CAZA with a lot of properties, and we have stories around property A sold at 530, property B went on the market 525, and it sold for 540, right? We've A/B tested this to a point that we know whenever we're in the middle, depending on where it is, like on a 2-bedroom, 2-bath or 1-bedroom bath condo, that might not happen. But other than that, usually I rather go below because I know I can go.
So 2 months back, same thing happened. I got a one condo weekly, basically now 45 days. So my seller was, you want the price a little higher. So I calculate my number. I say you bought the property in a cash, and your closing cost you counting this much. And the closing cost almost gonna be half because it's a cash, no lender involved. So he got that leverage, that what he looking for 10K. And then I took the 5,000 below the market and I sold almost like 20K off the nobody sold in the cash, So that's he got the bonus. He was happy with what price I put it in the market, 5K less than everybody. So we got a 220K.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to be happy.
It's really scary. Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm just saying in this case, run the number very tight. And always have a leverage.
It's
Everybody
really-
wants to be happy, right? But fear and greed are what move human behavior. Always have, always will. Supply and demand, fear and greed. If you don't take away anything else from the discussion about anything, about any market of any value anywhere, supply and demand, fear and greed. So when you price for shortage, people see your product, say, oh shit, I need to get this before someone else does. I will miss out if we don't make the strongest offer we possibly can, as opposed to overpricing, then no fear, no incentive. The buyer's greed kicks in, like, well, that's crazy. They're never gonna get that. I wonder how desperate they'll get if we just don't make an offer and wait till, right? Fear or greed, one of the two will be working for or against you. So induce fear by pricing where there's some scarcity introduced into the marketplace.
Fear. It's very scary for sellers to say, well, you're telling me to price below what I see. What if I don't get more, right? It's all about the data. It's all about knowing, first of all, what product do we have? Is there, enough demand out there? Like, again, in a condo, the reason I would probably a little bit ignore this, and if comps are at 430, I'll be at 430, is because I'm going to have one offer. I'm going to negotiate that differently. But in this market where there is a lot of demand, we have a lot of examples, like when we sold properties, when Mark and Rob flipped things, like in this example, I would price at 475 and it could go way higher. And we've done this so many times to have data to prove that actually, like, going a little bit below will create a lot of interest. And there's always one buyer for your property. That person has already seen it. They're already actively searching. Everything else you're doing is to create competition for that one person. They're going to win anyways. Are they going to compete with one person or 10 people because of the price, band that you're in?
So just recently, I give one example, just recently, right now happening in a South Riding, where our listing came with the right price. We go for almost like 55, 50K. Then another property came in my open house. I put on the contract within 1 day. Then another property, which is same style, everything almost same. They put it for almost like a 40, 18,000 above the market. Within a 7 day, the property reduced for 20,000. Within a 2 week, property reduced for 49,000. So what property we sold it under contract right now, it's almost 50K. This property is not going anywhere. It's already there from 639 to 590.
Yeah, it got stale.
Yeah.
And people started saying, what's wrong with it? Right, and there's nothing wrong, it's just mispriced. Okay, let's get to some networking facts.
All right, let's do it. So if you have to cut price, go to the next band. I think, Ali, you're talking about.
Yeah,
private
there's
bands,
no
right?
plans of cutting 10,000 here, 5,000 there, wait, and just make a correct price cut, which is those 25,000 increments.
$550,000 flip that you're trying to sell, the dropping price $1,000 doesn't help you any, is the point, right? You have to move to the next band where you can introduce scarcity, introduce fear of loss and.
And the reason for that, the main reason for that is, again, the searches that are set up. You go down 10,000, you can achieve that. What you're doing, you're triggering auto emails. You can do that by changing it by $1. So if your goal is I want new fresh, like I want people to see it, you can change it by $1. But when you go down 25,000, you're creating a whole new market that didn't see it before, that now sees it. That's the reason you're changing it that way.
Yep. All right, anybody want to see a house or we want to start chatting about it?
It will take me a little while to pull it up, so I don't think.
Let's chat.
Yeah, we'll just chat.
All right, well, anybody wants to see a house, we'll see if I can pull it up while we're networking and run through an example of one that we just did, so you can see how it looked and.
So we're gonna spend some time networking. This is the main thing we're here for. But before we go there, any questions before we finish this topic?
So when you start,
Yes.
what is the average time for permitting happening in Fairfax?
Fairfax, Prince William and Loudoun, you can get a permit if you already have plans and you know what you're supposed to be doing in 48 hours to actually get the permit. Applying for a permit, depending on what you're doing, I guess is the caveat. If you're building a new house, well, then you got plan review and that may take a few days. If you're knocking down several walls, that might take a couple of days. But if you're just doing a basic renovation, like most of the stuff that we do, got the kitchen, got the bathroom, don't make huge wholesale changes to things, you can get those permits in like a day. And if you have a plan, it's a pretty simple plan. Depending on what the workload is at the county that day, in a day or two, generally, you can get through the process for most basic renovations.
If we adding a kitchen in the basement.
Mhm.
So in those scenario, how long is gonna take? Because they're gonna ask for the diagram.
So it depends on if what the thing you're asking for changes the use. And I would say adding a basement in most jurisdictions around here gets into a use issue, because you can't just go sticking another basement in there and creating a multi-family house, which is what the municipality would consider that, because I've got two kitchens, I have the ability for multiple different unrelated families to live in this house. That's different use code than they want to start considering zoning and other stuff, right? So it depends on what you're asking to do, or what kind of review that you could be asking for. But basic rehab, it's days, it's not weeks.
Let's
Unless you're in a town. If you're in a town, especially the town of Dumfries, 3 weeks. Because they don't have a lot of people.
All right, let's do last question over there, right? Do you want to get rentals and you're asking when should I start flipping? I think the way I would think about it is flipping is active income, but it's a job, right? And it requires time. And I think what the time to do it is when you feel ready. And but you also have to realize, like, if I'm putting the time here, where else am I taking it from? And investing in real estate and rental is more creating a passive income. And it's that balance of those, right? That you think about your long-term financial goals.
There's a lot of wisdom in what he just said right there, right? It's like,
I learned from him.
yeah, well, what happens is there is a model where you could just stay at your job. You can get a great you have great W-2 income, work with the government, make good money, and you just accumulate assets over time and just build this massive nest egg. There's so many developers and investors that I've met who then, like 15 years later, were like, if I just kept more of what I had, it'd be game over. But what happened was everybody was taking money today, putting it in their pocket, not thinking about tomorrow, right? So it's the balance between those two things, right? And so what I said, there's a lot of wisdom in it. If you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. So if you've got a job and then you start flipping houses, well, it's going to take away from your job, right? You may not perform well in that job after a while. You may make the decision, let me let go of this job so I can spend more money, so more time like flipping houses. And you've got to kind of decide that, right, balance. You might say, shit, flipping just takes too much time. There's too much inherent risk. There's too much trailing liability. I'd rather not do that. Maybe I do 1 a quarter, I do 2 a year, right? But the real goal is buying assets long-term that pay you, right? And then you wake up 10 years, 15 years later, 20 years later, and you're like, wow. Like, that's amazing, right? In fact, we were having a discussion with Matt Mabel, who's running actually Great Gainesville tonight. And he was just doing some basic math, and he said, yeah, if I don't do anything, just with the little assets that he had, he's got like 5 or 6, he's like, if I don't do anything at all, I'm adding $100,000 to my net worth every single year, just because of the way the numbers work, right? That pay down is happening. Not even factoring in appreciation, debt pay down, cash flow. It's like time takes care of it.
Hopefully a cash flowing property, right?
Cash flow problem.
So we sell when we have to sell, because they don't cash flow, and the return on investment is poor if you hold it. But the big takeaway is never sell if you don't have to, right? The right thing to do is not flip, never sell, only rent, or if you can afford to just sit on the thing, probably sit on the thing. Over 4, 5, 6 years, don't know, market goes up, market goes down. Over 20, 25 years, we know what real estate does over a long period of time. So yeah, never sell if you don't have to. But if you are gonna, do these things that we talked about doing. And then hopefully you will stay out of trouble, make a couple bucks, have a good experience, want to do it again. And if we can help you with any of that, we'd love to do it. Yeah, that's why we're here. All right.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome, thank you.